Hello, this video is going to act as a model for how to audit an assessment. And as a reminder, we audit an assessment to look for alignment and rigor, ensuring that the test assesses standards appropriately. So this assessment that we will use to kind of model through how to do an audit is this 5th grade assessment in ELA, and it's from the EL curriculum. It's linked here, and we can just pop right over this way. And so I know we often talk about in ELA, effective assessments will have you do a cold read or a new read, and I can see that right here. This is the text students are reading. And then right below, I can see all of the questions. So the first step in an assessment audit is to unpack the standards. So for this example, we are going to be using this standard here, RL.5.4. Determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative language such as metaphors and similes. As part of the unpacking process, you're going to want to find exemplar items to help get a better picture of how students are going to be asked to show mastery of the standard. So you can see I've pulled those here. We've got 2 examples from Park. And if you look at each example, you can see they have an excerpt of text, either a phrase or a sentence. And they're being asked to give the meaning of a word within the text or within a phrase within the text. So you have to select the meaning, and then part B is where they have to kind of explain the rationale for selecting that meaning. So how did you know? They have to be able to answer, how did you know? What does it mean, and how do you know? So when I look at the standard and I look at the example items, I can see that students are going to need to do a number of things to show mastery on this. They're first going to be able to have to be able to identify either a word or a phrase or a figurative language figurative language within the text. After they've identified it, they have to do a little bit more. They have to say what it means and be able to explain it. Now that we know what the expectations are for this standard, we have to look at our assessment and we have to decide how closely does each item match what students need to know and be able to do based off that analysis. So we're going to look first at question 1. So I'm going to pop over to my assessment and look at question 1 and think about, does this match what they need to do? So question 1 has 2 parts, just like what we saw in the exemplar. It says in the paragraph above, circle one simile. And then part B says what 2 things are being compared in the simile you chose. So this question is requiring students to identify a simile by circling it and then naming the things that are being compared. The standard requires that students determine the meaning of figurative language as it's used in the text. So those things are quite different. This question is really just identifying, but I know from the standard and the exemplar items, they really have to be able to give meaning. They have to say what that figurative language means and explain it. So this is not aligned. So I will write no, it's not aligned. And then I'll give my reason that it's requiring just identification when we know they need to be able to give meaning. So we're going to take one more look at another question, and you'll get a chance to kind of practice some of this thinking on your own. So what we'll do is we'll read question 2, and then you can pause the video and kind of decide, does this align? Does it not align, or is it somewhat aligned? And once you have your rationale, you can start the video back up and we'll review the alignment together. So go ahead, pause, and come on back as soon as you've got your rationale. Okay, welcome back. So question number 2 is somewhat aligned. When we look at question 2, part A and part B are exactly the same as question 1, only sub out metaphor, a different type of figurative language. So we know part A and part B are not aligned because we just had the same rationale for the first question. But question 2 has a third part, part C, and it asks, how does this metaphor help you understand the meaning of the text? And that piece is aligned, right? When we look up here, we see they have to explain the meaning, or they have to identify the meaning or define the meaning and then explain it. So part A and B are not aligned, and part C is aligned. So we would say that because this has some aligned parts and some not aligned parts, it is somewhat aligned. I think it's also just important to note that the way that part C question is phrased may need to be revised. I'm not sure that phrasing is going to get students to be able to say exactly what the metaphor means, but the alignment is there, so we would still say that it is somewhat aligned. So as you move through the session, you'll be able to take a look at this full exemplar assessment audit, and you'll get a chance to do a little bit more practice with it. But as you go through the rest of the session and audit your own assessments later on, we just need to remember that we're rating how closely the items reflect the standard and the expectations around how students are going to have to show mastery. This will help us determine what, if any, modifications are needed to our assessments.